Happy hunting to all low-rank hunters and master hunters alike. Monster Hunter Wilds is only 3 months away, and I know we are all dying to dive right in to all the content that is in store. However, for just a moment, well actually 3 videos, I want to redirect your attention and pay homage to a game that kept us satiated and satisfied for 6 whole years. Of course, I'm talking about Monster Hunter World Iceborne, the game that caused Monster Hunter to rise to fame. In these videos, which I've separated into 3 videos for your viewing convenience, I will cover all our beloved monsters which we have fought many times over those 6 glorious years. However, before we get into it, I want to go over the rules for how I'll be ranking and scaling these monsters. For these first 2 videos, I will be covering around 53 of the 68 monsters. This is of course excluding Leshen, Ancient Leshen, and Behemoth, as I don't consider them Monster Hunter original monsters. Each monster will be ranked in terms of fight enjoyment, design quality, and relevancy. This being said, for the first 2 videos, the monsters will only be ranked based on appearance and fight alone, as none of them are really important late game. If they truly are important for late game, I will make a note of it and address it. This video was edited by RathalosWach. If you have not checked out his channel, go ahead and go check that out after this video. He makes incredible content based and centered around new things coming to Wilds, as well as creative content centered around the release of Wilds. Without further ado, let's get into the rankings. At number 68, the monster to kick off this video, the lowest ranking monster in World Iceborne, is Gyarados. It had to go to some monster, and sadly it just happens to be Gyarados. For one, I just want to clarify, I absolutely despise this thing's design and fight. It's just so boring. It's like bottom of the barrel, basically. It gives a lot of contrast to the other monsters. Without this monster, there wouldn't be that contrast, so it does have a purpose. But on its own, it's just so, just devoid of flavor. Fight, there's nothing to it. Design, there's not much to it. I'm not going to lie. You don't really even have to fight this thing after you fight it 2 times or 3 times to end the story. And that's it. So for that reason, 68, Gyarados. Coming in at number 67 is Great Jagras. Great Jagras is probably the most basic monster, as it's the first monster you fight in World. That being said, that holds its potential back a lot. It's similar to Chotacabra and the new game coming out, Wilds, where you have this monster. It's the first monster, which it's just the intro monster, so it's not going to have a lot to it. It's great at what it does. It's a great intro monster. It's a great first monster, but it doesn't compare to the others. It has some notable fight aspects. I would say the 2 most notable is the fact that it can bloat. Basically, after it eats a monster, it will become fat and bloated, and then later it can regurgitate the monster's body parts onto you and deal some damage. It's a beginner monster. No one's really carding to this thing. If you card to this thing, you're going to have a tough time with the rest of these monsters. But for that reason, 67, Great Jagras. Number 66, I put Kuliyaku. Kuliyaku is for sure one of the goofier monsters in World. Yeah, its design is pretty bland. It has these desert-like patterns which help it blend in. But anyway, its fight mechanic is pretty basic. Its main fight mechanic is that it digs this boulder out of the ground, and it uses that boulder both offensively and defensively. Basically, offensively, it uses it like a bludgeoning tool, where it will lunge at the player, striking the player or the hunter with the boulder, dealing a decent amount of damage. Again, it's a beginner monster, so it's not dealing too much damage. But anyway, defensively, it will use this boulder protectively. Any weapon, even purple sharpness, I believe, will deflect off this boulder, making it kind of annoying to deal with. But if you just step to the side or behind Kuliyaku, you can easily avoid this mechanic and just kind of make this monster irrelevant or a pushover monster. So for that reason, Kuliyaku, 66. Coming in at number 65, I am putting Dodogama. I know a lot of you are already really upset about this choice, but I am not a fan of Dodogama. I'm not a hater of Dodogama, but I don't hype him up like some of y'all do, which is crazy. This thing is literally just a straight copy of Great Jagras and Great Gyros, but it just looks cute. And for that reason, I'm not a huge fan of it, right? It's just a basic monster. Its main, I get it's adorable, right? Anyway, its main fight mechanic is really that it just eats these ores, right? Metal ore, and will spit that out in the form of a ball of fire almost, or a ball of flaming ore, and that's about it. It'll charge. It'll do the same thing that Great Gyros and Great Jagras will. except it's just, it's just not that interesting. I'm sorry, it's not. It truly isn't. At number 64, we have the best of the Great Lizard monsters, Great Gyros. Great Gyros is easily the best of the three, which includes Dodogama, Great Gyros, and Great Jagras. So Great Gyros is definitely the best of the three. I mean, I would say in most people's rankings. Anyway, Great Gyros can be seen walking around with its posse of lesser Gyros, which, like I said earlier, Great Jagras does this, but Great Gyros does it to a larger scale, almost. So, for one, the lesser Gyros actually are active in the fight. Anyway, so in this posse, reminds me a lot of the green snakes from Ninjago, right? The ones that, like, spit acid venom or whatever it was and had the ninjas hallucinate. Anyway, I'm going on, like, a tangent now. Great Gyros utilizes paralysis, which can be like more of a nuisance than a real threat. And its fight is kind of basic. It's another beginner monster. So for that reason, number 64 is Great Gyros. Number 63 is Barroth. Barroth was one of the first monsters I remember that caught my eye when a World Cutscenes video came out. I was like, this monster's sick. It's this giant like bull desert monster. Turns out it's a lot smaller than I swear they made it larger in that cutscenes video. Anyway, it resembles sort of a theropod dinosaur. It blows air through its head, through its like crest, making a train sound, sort of similar to like bulls in the cartoons when they're about to like charge someone. Speaking of charge, fight-wise, it will charge at you and it will sling mud at you, making it this mix between like a bull and a pig, which I find really interesting. As much as I like to rank this monster a lot higher for like nostalgia reasons, I just can't. It doesn't hold up to the others, honestly. So for that reason, number 63 is Barroth. At number 62, I am ranking Uragon. Uragon is another monster that falls in the like bland and boring category. I'm sorry, a lot of people like this monster. I know. Actually, I don't think a lot of people do, but some people do. Right? If you're a Uragon fan, I'm sorry. Okay. But it doesn't intrigue me that much. It's basically made out of metal ore, and all it does is roll around. That's not all it does. So fight-wise, it rolls around. That's its main mechanic, but it also expels this flammable gas from its body that can do some decent damage if you're not careful. It also has this, like, slam attack with its chin, which is, like, really hard, apparently. It's, like, really condensed like a hammer, like a sledge. It just slams it down. And Uragon will also toss out these, like, flaming balls that will explode. Like, they have a tick timer, and if you're in the range of the ball when it explodes, you take damage. For those reasons, not really a fan of it, honestly. Doesn't really intrigue me. Number 62 is Uragon. At number 61 is Beotodus. Beotodus is the second piscine monster on this list, and a lot better than Gyratodus. I mean, Gyratodus, that's not hard to beat, to be honest. Beotodus doesn't really have to do much to be better than Gyratodus. But anyway, Beotodus is really cool design-wise. He's like the shark of the Hoarfrost Reach. He sort of swims around through the snow, resembling like Jaws, using its crest as like a shark's fin. Anyway, it also sounds like a chainsaw when you fight it, which is really dope. I mean, I really like that design choice. I don't know why they did that, but it just sounds really cool. Fight-wise, I would say this monster is actually really lacking. I'm saying, like, if it had more to its fight, it would be higher. In fact, it probably would be higher than the third piscine monster on this list, which we will talk about later. But for that reason, 61 is Beotodus. Could have more to its fight. Coming in at number 60, I ranked Bonbaro. Bonbaro is another monster that to me suffers from bland boringness. I'm sorry. It's basically just a giant ram to me. That's its whole design. It's just this giant like sheep ram that lives in the Hoarfrost Reach. Its fight can be decently interesting. Depending on which region you fight this monster in, it'll either throw this giant boulder or this giant tree log at you. It can also cause different ailments depending on where you fight it, which is, a decent fight mechanic, but it definitely doesn't set it that high above other monsters on this list. So for that reason, number 60, Bonbaro. At number 59 is Puke Puke. Puke Puke is definitely one of the goofier monsters, I would say. I don't think anyone's really denying that it's goofy. However, it is very bright and full of color, which makes it stand out amongst the bland monsters in this game. Gyratodus, I'm talking about you. Anyway, its element of choice is poison. It will use its poison through its tail, which it will use to shoot like plumes of poisonous gas, and if you stay in that gas too long, you will get poisoned. It'll spit at you, which again will poison you, and it will use its tongue. I believe its tongue can poison you, but off the top of my head, I'm not really sure. Again, don't really fight these monsters that much. This is definitely one of, like, once you fight this monster, you can kind of be done with it for a long time, unless you're farming, like, Colorful Carnival, right, to rank up. Anyway, I'm just going on like a rant. But yeah, for that reason, 59, Puke Puke. Number 58 is Zitsuyaku. Zitsuyaku is another, like, pushover monster, in my opinion. For one, its design, I think, is really original. I really like its design. It's sort of like Gypsyros from the past games. It basically uses this head crest to flash you, which will blind your character, stunning it for a little bit, allowing the Zitsi to get some hits in on you. This is really more of a nuisance than it is an actual threat. So again, very pushover monster. You can really eliminate or render this thing useless by just standing behind it or destroying its head crest. If you also wear a certain amount of Fatalis armor, you don't even get affected by the flash. So for those reasons, easy monster to fight. I mean, it's one of the beginner monsters. Yeah, so 58, Zitsuyaku. Coming in at number 57 is Palumu. Palumu is definitely one of the more interesting, yet strange monsters, I would say. At first glance, when you first find it, it just resembles a giant ball of fur floating in the air. But as you get closer, you can kind of tell that it's this bat. Palumu basically sucks in a lot of air and stores it in this sack and uses it to float around and fire compressed bursts of air at the hunter. This can be tricky for melee users because it will stay inflated for a long time, meaning you either have to flash it out of the air, you have to wait for it to come down, or you can time your attacks right, sort of when it's, you know, bouncing in the air. Speaking of that, fight-wise, it'll bounce in the air using its tail like a bludgeoning tool, which is kind of fun, but again, it's a basic monster, so for that reason, 57 is Palumu. At number 56, we have Lavasioth. Lavasioth is, for one, I would say the best piss sign monster, but a lot of people hate this monster for reasons I don't really know. I mean, I get that it's annoying. We'll get into that in a second, but it's not that annoying, right? Design-wise, it's very interesting to me. It's very cool. It's basically this fish that swims around in lava or magma, and it will jump out of the magma and attack the player. But it has a very large downtime. When it's in the magma, it'll sort of stick in this magma for a little bit, making it hard to reach in the center of, you know what I'm talking about, the holes where the magma is. Anyway, and it'll jump out of those. Fight-wise, the magma will cool on its body, which hardens its outer shell, causing a lot of weapons to bounce off of it. This is kind of the annoying thing, and it stays like this for a long time. I believe it stays like this until it goes back into the lava. Yeah, but anyway, so for those reasons, 56, best Piscine monster or Piscine monster, but not even close to best monster. Number 55, we have Legiana. Legiana is, I would say, one of the more majestic monsters in World. I would say that's due to it has a very elegant appearance, and I would say that's because of its wings. I say its wings flow really well and are very, like, wide and encapsulating, right? At least for the battlefield's sake. Speaking of battlefield, this monster will fly around, and its element of choice is ice, so it will often cover the battlefield in ice, or like these little icicles shooting, you know, straight lines of ice. If you're unfortunate enough to get hit by these, you will suffer ice blight more than likely, which is really detrimental to a lot of the stamina builds, like you know, dual blades, bow, insect glaive. Maybe I'm not a really big insect glaive player. Anyway, if you're any of those, then you're gonna suffer, because those are stamina builds, and Ice Blight causes you to lose stamina fast. But for that reason, 55, Legiana. At number 54, we have Rathian. Rathian is surprisingly low, I would say, for a lot of you. A lot of you would expect Rathian a lot higher, but to me, the only reason this monster is this low is because I'm not a fan of its color scheme. Base Rathian has this really, like, matte, like, puke green color that I'm not a huge fan of. I know that it's realistic and immersive, right? You're not going to have monsters with really bright and saturated colors, but Rathian, it's just a boring, like, dirt looking color. Like, it's really, like, stale. Its fight, though, is very entertaining. It'll fire these fireballs at you and poison you with its tail, and it'll also do these backflips, which I really like with its tail, where it'll hit you. Anyway, it's an entertaining fight, but not a good monster because of its, like, look, I would say. Or at least its color. So for that reason, 54 is Rathian. At number 53, and right after Rathian, is Azure Rathalos. Similar to Rathian, I'm not a huge fan of Azure Rathalos' color scheme compared to base Rathalos, which is inverted for Rathian and its other subspecies. I'm much more a fan of the red than the blue, of course. Azure Rathalos also flies around a lot more, so for melee players, it's a real nuisance. You have to flash this thing down a lot, or you can do what I'm doing in this video and use a sticky build to constantly knock it down, which is just completely abusing the fight. But yeah, for that reason, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of this thing. It's like, you know, the blue is just not hitting for me. It is more like deadly, and its poison is more potent, I believe, than or base Rathalos, but Rathalos is just better. I'm sorry, the OG is better for this specific monster duo. Right, anyway, 53 Azure Rathalos. At number 52 is Radobon. Radobon is the distant cousin to the rolling monster that you saw earlier, Uragon. However, Radobon beats him out, as well as some other monsters for its higher spot. Radobon is a tar-covered monster that picks up bones as it rolls around in the Rotted Vale. The Rotted Vale is basically a place where monsters literally go to die. Knocking Radobon's bones off its body is like so satisfying to me. It's just one of its main like fight designs that I like about it. However, fight-wise, it is a very lacking monster. It's a very pushover monster. Its most interesting thing is that it can put you to sleep with this sleep gas that it expels from its body, like Uragon with the flammable gas. However, the reason Radobon is this high is because you need it for health augments later in the game. Like I said, I would let you know if there were any monsters that were important late game. This is one of them. But augment wise, I'm not going to go through every monster and mention it in every monster. So if it is important for augments, you know it is. But this was like one of the cases where I wanted to explain why it's a little bit higher than it probably should be. So if there's another monster you feel like that's probably higher, that's probably the reason. But anyway, for that reason, 52 Radobon. Coming in at number 51 is Shrieking Legiana. I'm going to try to make this one short since I just kind of took a lot of time with Radobon. Shrieking Legiana is basically Legiana, but with just more ice, right? You just put more ice into the fight, and that's Shrieking Legiana. I mean, technically it is more aggressive. I think it flies a lot more too, but I mean, really all that you see is the fact that it has more ice. Its design is, it gets more majestic, I would say, but yeah, not too much. It's a little bit better. 51 Shrieking Legiana. At the number 50 flat spot is Nightshade Palumu. Nightshade Palumu is the better version to base Palumu, which we covered earlier, the bat monster. However, this version of it has a much better color scheme. It's basically black with like green and red spots on it, I believe, like circles within circles. Anyway, so for that reason, I think that its design is a lot better. Fight-wise, I would also say it's more engaging and better, simply because this one utilizes sleep element. So if you're not careful, Nightshade Palumu will fire this sleep gas at you, and if you get caught in it, you will go to sleep. So make sure that you are carrying well over enough energy drinks in your inventory. If you're not carrying energy drinks, this thing is going to be more of a nuisance than a threat, but definitely a huge nuisance. So yeah, for that reason, number 50, Nightshade Palumu. Number 49 is Basiljuice. Basiljuice is honestly like one of the more stunning monsters with an even better soundtrack, might I add. This thing's music is so like engaging and badass. It will fly high above you, raining down bomb pods like a giant bomber plane, and it will also force itself into any fight that it deems necessary. Even if you're on the complete other side of the map, this thing will hunt you down and just dive bomb you, right? Which can be really annoying for a lot of players. It's definitely a nuisance. I will say it's held back a little bit because it wasn't in Iceborne. They kept it in World and decided to put its variant in Iceborne, which we will get into like a couple videos down the line. But for that reason, I would say 49 is a good spot for it. So 49 Basiljuice. Coming in at number 48, Rathian's subspecies, Pink Rathian. Unlike Rathian, I really like this monster's color scheme. I think it matches perfectly with the Coral Highlands area that it's from in World. Its fight is basically the same though, honestly, except it's more deadly, its venom is more potent, and its fire deals more damage. However, I will say this thing seems to stay in the air a little bit longer than base Rathian does, which again can make it a nuisance for some melee hunters. But if you bring flash pods or just want to bring a sticky build like I'm using right now, then you can do that and this monster becomes pretty easy to deal with. So for that reason, 48 Pink Rathian. Number 47 is Coral Puke Puke. Coral Puke Puke, for one, is leagues above base Puke Puke. I would say in every category it's better. For one, its design and its color scheme are better. It basically is made of like yellow, orange, and red feathers, and especially when it's enraged, its head gets a lot more red and like bloodshot almost. Its concept is really cool as well. It lives in the coral highlands and sucks up a ton of water and stores it in its tail, which it uses to fire compressed beams at the player, which is really cool. And it fires these beams through its tail and mouth. It'll also do this spinning attack in the air where it does like a spiral of water. And for all these reasons, I mean, it just outshines base Puke Puke by a lot. So 47 Coral Puke Puke. Coming in at number 46, and the lowest ranking elder in World Iceborne, a lot of you probably already know who it is. It is Zora Magdaros. For one, I just want to point out and say, to clarify, this thing's design is absolutely phenomenal. I have no issue with it in that category. It's basically a giant snapping turtle with a volcano on its back, right? How they managed to mess this up, I don't know. Its fight is the problem. It's an absolute slog fest, right? Terrible fight. You start on its back, and you break these things called magma cores, and then you fight Nergigante for a second, again on its back, and then you fly to this wall through your Windrake, and what do you do on this wall? You continually reload these cannons and fire a bunch of cannonballs at it until it leaves you alone. Until it says, I'm done, I'm gonna go, and it leaves you alone, right? You don't even kill it. You don't even kill it, which makes it so unsatisfying and unfulfilling. So for that reason, lowest ranking elder, 46, Zora Magdaros. Number 45, Tobikadachi. Tobikadachi is a wonderfully designed monster. It's basically a glowing, flying squirrel that paralyzes you if you aren't too careful. That being said, design-wise, it's top tier. This is, I think, when the monsters really start getting top-notch with Tobikadachi. I'm really excited for him to be in Outlanders. I'm not sure if I'm going to play it, to be honest, but I'm at least excited that he's in that game, unlike other monsters. Again, I'm talking about Gyrototus. His fight is decent. You have to be really quick with like your iframes to dodge this thing's attacks sometimes. So for beginners, it can be a tough fight. I remember kind of struggling with it a little bit, but I struggled even more with its other, variants. So we'll get into that in a second. Number 45, Tobikadachi. Number 44 is Anjanath, everyone's favorite brute wyvern from World, at least after they finally beat it. If you haven't played World, just know this thing was a huge wall for a lot of players. A lot of beginning players struggle with this thing because it's honestly a challenging monster for beginners. Anjanath is a beautifully designed monster resembling a T-Rex with fur running down its back and tail. When it becomes enraged, its nostrils flare up into a crest and frills sprout from its back. It can be a challenging fight for beginners. It wields the element of fire, which it will shoot from its mouth and bursts of wide flames. So for all these factors, it's a great monster. I think this is, again, when it starts to get good with Tobikadachi and Anjanath, two very iconic monsters from World. For all these reasons, number 44, very deserving spot, Anjanath. Coming in at number 43 is Acidic Glavenus. I know a lot of you are surprised by this, probably, because the OG Glavenus, or the base Glavenus, is a highly rated monster. In fact, I do rate it very highly. However, Acidic Glavenus, I do not rate very highly. I think it's a poor copy, a poor knockoff of the original. I'm not a huge fan of it. Its gimmick is that it grows these acidic crystals on its tail, which it has to shed with its whetstone mouth, creating a razor sharp tail, which it will swipe at you with. It can be a dangerous fight, a dangerous monster, but all in all, I don't see anyone really carding to this thing that much. OG base Glavenus is much more dangerous because it wields fire. So this thing is just sort of overall lame to me, I'm not gonna lie. So for that reason, number 43. And don't get me wrong, these are still great monsters. I just wanna say that. But this thing just falls really short. So for that reason, number 43, Acidic Glavenus. Number 42 is Odogaron. We're getting down to the top two monsters in this first video. Odogaron is everyone's favorite giant red dog. It resembles a Oni from Japanese mythology, and a lot of anime-loving, longsword-wielding hunters hunt it for that reason, for its layered armor, which makes them look like an anime character themselves. This thing is just really top tier. I love the design of its skin. I can't really explain the texture, but I just love it. Its fight can be challenging. It's the first monster in World that implements bleed, and I believe it's the only monster until Iceborne when Nargacuga is introduced. If I am wrong about that, feel free to flame me in the comments. But yeah, overall fight, it's a very quick monster. It's probably one of the quickest monsters in World. Great fight, have no complaints for its fight or design. Number 42, Odogaron. Number 41, and the number one ranked monster for this first video of bronze tier, is Viper Tobikadachi. I would say this monster is very deserving of the top spot in this first video. I would say in every category, it is better than base Tobikadachi. If you disagree, I mean, that's your opinion. And my opinion is that it's much better. For one, its deep orange color is so satisfying in contrast with the deep blue of the Hoarfrost Reach. They just go so well together because they're contrasting colors. Fight-wise, I mean, again, just much better than Tobikadachi and such an entertaining fight. I mean, speed-wise, it's about the same, but this thing, its poison is so potent. It will basically fire these poisonous quills from its tail, which is its weak spot, by the way, if you didn't know that. Aim for its tail. Anyway, so its tail, it'll fire these poisonous quills, meaning you have to carry a lot of antidotes. I struggled with this thing because of that. I had to go through so many antidotes and go to camp so many times just to get more antidotes. Its paralysis, I also find, is a lot more dangerous. If you clutch claw anywhere onto this thing's face, you're immediately paralyzed. I mean, I don't know if I'm just unlucky, but every time I just get paralyzed. So, first video, these top like 5 monsters are just where it starts to get really good, I would say. We're going to carry into the next video where we'll start off Silver League. That wraps it up. Number 41, Viper Tobikadachi. That is all the rankings we have for the first video, which includes all the low rank bronze monsters of World Iceborne. If you found that you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next 2 videos in this series, as well as some other videos that I have planned for the near future. Thank you guys for the hunts. I'll catch you on our next expedition.